Oh man, is that awesome? Grab a seat. Let's get ready to dive into this. If you are a veteran, it's Veterans Day weekend. Can we have you stand? We'd love to thank you for your service. Veterans, let's give them a hand. Thank you. Outstanding. Thank you. Praise God. Steve McLean, who actually preached last week, and he's one of our GC leaders, actually served in the Vietnam War. I was like, wow. So just thank you so much, veterans. We love you, appreciate you. Guys, want to get right into it. Luke writes with such strong purpose. He's not here to try to tickle ears or entertain, but to help his friend Theo and actually the world not just sort of believe in Jesus. And I want to ask you, do you just sort of believe in Jesus? Is Jesus a Sunday thing for you, or is he an everyday, absolute, desperate thing that you need? And so again, Luke writes not to, that the hearers would just have a sort of belief about Christ, but a powerful, absolute certainty about Christ. In fact, we see the thesis and the springboard of Luke in chapter 1. And again, we've been in Luke now for a number of months now, about 3 months. Let's go back to the beginning just for a moment, because the thesis of the entire book, the Gospel of Luke, is in chapter 1 and verse 4. Read it with me. That you may have certainty. I love that, certainty. And I think of the word certainty, I think of cement, that it would be cemented in our mind. It would be strong in our mind, that there wouldn't be any confusion, but certainty. So the opposite of confusion, Satan is the author of confusion, that we would have a certainty that it's cemented and steeled in our minds, that like the helmet of salvation, it would be strong in there. That you may have certainty concerning the things that you have been taught. Well, this is something, guys, sometimes the gospel can sound like white noise. You've heard me say this, like Jesus climbed down from the throne to climb up to a cross. You hear some of it. So I was like, Lord, will you help me say it in a way that's still new? His mercies are new every morning, right? And that I would take ownership of in my own mind. And this is something, I wrote this down. It's the gospel, just and putting it in just internalizing it. And I was crying reading this. But here's what I put: the gospel is the fact that Jesus let our sin crush him instead of crush us. Think about that for a second. He bore the punishment. He let sin, all the weight of that. He drank the cup of wrath. He bore it. It crushed him so it wouldn't crush us. Wow. So be certain of that. Don't just sort of think about that. Be certain of that fact. It should be our prayer to ask for more faith. If it's not certain, if you're just kind of wavering, you feel like a wave tossed to and fro, and you need that stability. You want to not have an easy believism where you're just kind of, but like a strong rooted gospel belief. Pray for it. Have an attitude that's like, Lord, help me. Help my unbelief. In fact, this is a desperate father. He's desperate for his demon-possessed son. In Mark chapter 9, he's desperate. He doesn't know what else to do. He's heard about Jesus. And now he doesn't have a certain solid, strong faith, but he's desperate. He's got nothing else to do, so he's going to go to Jesus. And Jesus confronts his unbelief. And then look at his response. I believe, but help my unbelief. As we finish chapter 8 today, man, it's action-packed. I hope you're ready for it. There's so much here. We're going to see Jesus prove he isn't just a good preacher. He's not just a good carpenter that'll make you a rocking chair, right? But actually the God-man. Fully man and fully God. Sin was brought into this world by a man, and so man would have to pay for it. So deity took on humanity without diminishing deity. This is the God-man. We see in Luke that if Jesus knows how many fathoms down the fish are in a lake, he certainly knows the depths of our folly in our heart. And he doesn't just know about our sin, he knows how to save us and bring better satisfaction than what sin offers. I heard David Platt say it this way: Jesus not only saves us, but satisfies us. In fact, it's right up here. Do we have it on the screen? Jesus not only saves us, but satisfies us. I thought that was so simple yet powerful. I think of something. I was praying last night, and I normally don't lay on the ground. I was in the living room, just laying flat on the ground, and I was like, I'm not going to give up in my prayer until the Lord just moves. And I was struggling to hear his voice, and this is something that I just to kind of let you in on my heart a little bit. That's ugly at times, and I was just like, Lord, man, I can't hear you right now. But I'm not going to give up until I hear from you. Oh man, woo! I actually dare you to do that. I dare you to go, Lord, I'm not gonna relent until you bless me. So I'm not gonna. Jacob wrestled all night, right? And I'm like, when I'm flat on my back, that usually lasts prayer-wise for about 5 minutes, and then I'm out, right? But the lights are on. I'm in the living room. It would have been awkward going to bed in there, right? So I'm not giving up. And this is something that the Lord showed me. He showed me my sin, okay, which is not fun. I'm just gonna be honest. We don't like to do that. And here's what he revealed. I wrote it down, that I struggle to consistently listen to. This is my prayer. As soon as I finally said, Lord, I struggle to listen to you, and he was like, he reinforced that, and he didn't do it in a mean way, but he was like, how does it feel when your kids don't listen to you? Do you get frustrated? So it was like a little bit of salt on the wounds, but he did it so lovingly, and then just over with his glory. I mean, just this boom hit me and satisfied me. So showed me my sin, but showed how he's better than that. His glory overshadows that. And I encourage you again, Jesus not only saves us, but satisfies you. And if you doubt this, chapter 8 is so good. There's so much here where we can see, man, he does save. He does satisfy. His glory, he's a glorious God. Again, he doesn't just have power over fish, but also over nature itself. Look at Luke 8:22 through 24. One day he got into a boat. Again, there's so much here. Got into a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, let us go across to the other side of the lake. Real quick, short story. I was in freshman year of high school, and I'm like, I'm going to go across the lake, Flathead Lake. It's Elmo Bay. I mean, it's not that far across. I'm a freshman in high school. I can do this. And my parents are like, Art, should he go on the sailboat by himself? It started to get a little windy, and it's this yellow sailboat. It's not that big. I should be fine. No, I'm a big boy. I can get out there. And as soon as I get out there, it's like I'm 100 yards out. I'm going. I'm like, it's getting windy. Let's turn around. It's called tacking, right? So you just, I lowered myself down, not fast enough. The boom, it came across, knocked me out of the boat, and I said a colorful word that I thought only God and I knew about. My dad comes out in the ski boat, and he's like, son, how you doing? And he's like, the whole shore heard your cry for help. Thank you. He winked at me. I'm like, oh man, here we go. But yes, Flathead Lake is a cold lake. Okay, so I blame that for my language. But anyways, there was probably some colorful language happening in this windstorm. Jesus was sleeping though, but we can say whatever we want. He's sleeping, but look at this. And as they sailed, he fell asleep. So Jesus falls asleep, and then watch what happens. And a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water. So the boat's filling up, and it's not a small little yellow boat. This is probably a bigger boat. Not a ship, but medium size, and that they are, and it says it's filling up with water, and they were in danger. Verse 24, and they went and woke him, saying, Master, Master, we are perishing. Side note, isn't it great that Christ, seated at the right hand of the Father, never takes naps? He doesn't. He constantly makes intercession for us. But here, he's submitted. He's subordinate to the Father in this season before he's exalted and lifted high at his resurrection. He is subordinate, and his humanity, he's actually sleeping. He's not faking it. He's really sleeping. And look at what they say. And they went and woke him, saying, Master, Master, we are dying, perishing. And he awoke, and it's interesting what he does. We always hear, he calmed the storm, which is true. It's true. But there's an interesting word in this translation, rebuked. He rebukes. It's not very fun. Like I said, last night, laying down on the floor praying, I got a little rebuke. It was like, boom, boom shakalaka, right? I mean, he hits you. Look at Master, we are perishing, and he awoke and rebuked. He rebuked what? The wind and the raging waves, and they ceased, and there was a calm. What's awesome is Jesus doesn't stop there. He doesn't just calm the storm. He doesn't just rebuke the storm. He rebukes the disciples. He goes after them. He rebukes and attacks the storm of unbelief in their heart. Here's what is so dangerous. American Christianity is very consumeristic. We want to feel good. We want an easy believism. We want to be able to come in. Sermon better be very short, better be action-packed, better have a couple video clips, it better maybe a little fog machine. I better entertain and make me feel good. And that's not what Jesus does. Like, he doesn't go, hey guys, don't you worry, with his long flowing hair or whatever, just like, I got this. Check this out. Boom. All right, you guys, you go. You know what? I'll take this. You guys go to sleep. I got this. I'm going to actually walk out on the water and I'm going to tow the boat the rest of the way. Like, we don't see Jesus do that. He's like, where's your faith? No, imagine this. He's saying it to you. Where's your faith? Where's your faith? Let Jesus say that to you this morning. Where is your faith? Verse 25, he said to them, where is your faith? Luke writes, chapter 1, he's going after their faith, that it would be cemented, it would be solid, it would be certain, not blown around like a wave, but strong and solid and tethered to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And look at their response to the rebuke. And they were afraid and they marveled. That word marvel is where you get the word awe. They were in awe. It went from apathy to fear to awe, saying to one another, who then is this that he commands even winds and water, and they obey him? I do want to tell you this sermon is not about the storm, although we're going to touch on it. We're just getting warmed up. I'm so excited. I shared this sermon on Thursday, and every man that either rededicated their life to Christ, one guy actually made a decision for Christ for the very first time. And so we have a holy expectation. God's going to move even now. Let him move as you hear from his word. So again, the fishing miracles, the calming of the storm, it's all amazing. It's incredible, but Jesus is just getting warmed up. He can do so much more. In fact, we see that he not only clears up the sky, but clears out demons out of a maniac. Then he clears out the disease from a bleeding woman. Then finally clears out a room full of mocking mourners so he could raise a little girl to life. Someone say amen. Man, this is awesome. And the big question, here it is, what do we do with this incredible hope? The maniac is made a missionary. The dad that was a little manic and scared Jairus, he's freaking out. He's made a missionary, okay? And he wants to make you a missionary. So what will you do with this incredible message that's been given to you? Do you have time? Do you have time? The better question is, do you have time for the other stuff? I mean, like I was thinking about it, my son loves the game. It's the Looney Tunes Dash or something like that. When he gets free time, he is running. It's like, no. You only get one day a week to play video games, and it's got to be either Super Smash Brothers, okay? Or okay, you get the point. But it's like, when we get free time, do we run to our favorite app? Do we run to check our fantasy football score? Do we run to check ESPN? Do we run to check the response of the election? What is the thing that we run to? What is it that we run to? What's the first thing? What do we do with this incredible hope? This can be a very scary world. Have you figured that out? I mean, already people have died after the election. I mean, people like talk about like, oh yeah, when you went to these guys, they went to war and they died for our country. It's like people are dying. I heard someone actually say they were more afraid of the citizens' response than who would be actually elected. They were more afraid of the people. They're afraid of people. And it doesn't mean it's not important who's elected, but they're like more afraid of what are people going to do. It's interesting. That was my wife that said that before the results were tallied up. She's like, I have a bad feeling. I have a bad feeling. We live in a world that hates to hear about your personal thoughts of hope unless it aligns with them. No one wants to hear from you unless it agrees with what they think. Religion, politics are off limits to this world. Have you been told that? Try posting something on Facebook. I mean, okay, Jesus loves me, this I know. Very important. We need to preach that. Never stop preaching that. But don't be afraid to discuss the political, because the political needs the biblical. Whether you are excited or bummed about who was elected, we are called to pray for our leaders as we worship Christ our King. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say on that. But again, what are we going to do with this message? I asked that question. I talked about the maniac made a missionary, and the manic dad, the guy that's scared, his Jairus. What do I do? He's desperate. He's going to go on and tell people about Christ. What are you going to do? Are you in the spiritually dry land? What will you do with the message of hope that you carry? The demoniac in this story goes back to his hometown to preach. Even though that town was full of hate, they did not like Jesus. Verse 37 says they asked him to leave. The maniac wants to go, right? Wants to go with Jesus. Jesus is like, actually, these guys need you. They need you to stay. I need you to stay and go after them. There's a Christian rapper, look him up, Andy Mineo, M-I-N-E-O, Andy Mineo. And there's a song called You Can't Stop Me. And it's amazing, very, very theologically correct, gospel-centered. But if you first watch it, you're just like, what is this rapping video? This is so goofy. I got a chance to meet him, and just his heart for Jesus. And anyway, very talented rapper, hip-hop artist. And that song, You Can't Stop Me. What if we had, it sounds almost arrogant, but he's talking about the Holy Spirit in him. You can't stop me. And all these people that will hate on him and come against him, he's like, you can't stop me. It's the gospel alive in him. And I thought that came to mind. And the guys in jail, they're like, hip hop is my language. You're speaking my language. Some of you are like, who's Andy Mineo? Look him up. Okay. But the maniac that's made a missionary, he would probably rap that if he knew the song. You can't stop me. You know, even though the townspeople are like, let's kick Jesus out of here. Let's get him out. The maniac, that now, he's not a maniac anymore. He's a missionary. He's like, okay, if Jesus can save me, he can save you religious folk. Okay, I'm going to go after you. All right? So, let's get some background on this demoniac. It says he was, when Jesus confronts him of his name, the guy doesn't introduce himself and say, hey, I'm Frank or I'm Pete. Actually says, I am Legion. You know, scary voice. That's my scary voice, guys. I am Legion, all right? I could tell you're very afraid. Legion literally means 3,000 to 6,000 troops. When you think of like Legion, like a Roman army, 3,000 to 6,000 is what that number means. So this is a multitude. This is a demon-infested man. The demons actually do something when they encounter Jesus. They don't worship Christ. Some translations say that they worshiped Christ. I don't like that. I don't agree with that. Just because they bow their knee and they're like, what will you do with me? Doesn't mean they have worthship, saying like, they're not in awe of him, like, oh, I love you. You know, I'm satisfied in you. Demons do not worship Jesus. But boy, they believe and know that he's king, in that they are not. They know the end of the story. We studied before Luke. Remember, what was the book? Revelation. Remember, they know the end of the story. They know that ultimately there's a bottomless pit. Ultimately there's a lake of fire. They know the end of the story, and they encounter the king, and they do not want to be thrown into the bottomless pit, so they ask to be thrown into these pigs. Very interesting. James, the book of James, it's a very short book, says something interesting. And he says this, and let it be said to you right now, you believe that God is one. Good for you. The demons believe that and shudder. That's very intense. So again, we're not to just have I believe in Jesus, but a faith that I'm going to put my life in it. He's hidden in me. I'm hidden in Christ. I'm hidden in him. That's a powerful and beautiful thing. He's paid for the penalty for my sin. He's given me a new heart. The same resurrection power that rose Jesus from the dead is alive in me. The demons don't have that kind of belief. They believe that God is one and that he's king, but they don't worship him. They're not satisfied in him. Look at verse 28 of chapter 8. When he, and again, he is the demoniac, when he saw Jesus, he cried out and he fell down before him and he said with a loud voice, and it's very theologically correct, actually. It's very interesting. What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Some of us have a great theology, but fail in methodology to functionally follow him. There's some people that have a great theology. They're theologically savvy. They can explain the Trinity. They can hermeneutically go through just what the substitutionary atonement is. Man, they could explain it. But are they a participant? Are they a spectator, or are they enjoying Christ? So they can speak about him being king. They can theologically give us, this is a good theological statement. What have you to do with me? Jesus, Son of the Most High God. Look at how they theologically show the supremacy of Christ, but they don't worship him. And so there's a danger. Some of you you realize the supremacy of Christ. You realize God is one, but you're not truly worshiping him and enjoying him and being in awe of. And some of you are apathetic right now, almost ready to fall asleep. Can't wait for me to hurry up because you need God to fill you and that he would actually be what satisfies you. That you wouldn't just go, yeah, Jesus is supreme, move on, next. But you're like, oh, he's so good. The word, now listen, the word demonized is a verb that means being afflicted. Okay, so this is interesting. This man isn't just, he is not enjoying himself. A lot of people are like, oh, that's his choice. Look at that idiot. And we judge. Broke my heart. There was a gentleman sitting in the service. I was leading worship with my guitar, playing Johnny Cash style, worship, my black guitar, right? And he was being afflicted. It broke my heart. I could just see the affliction. He could not. It was like nails on a chalkboard. He liked me. He was very friendly, but man, I started worshiping Christ, and it broke. He had to get up and leave. There's people that are being afflicted. If you were someone that is sitting here and it's like the heat is getting turned up and it's like nails on a chalkboard, man, press into Christ. Beg and plead for him to melt your heart of stone. Pray for him to come in and push through that blockade that has been there. But again, this man, he is not enjoying himself. Now, I thought this was interesting. The Spirit of God gave me insight. As I was preaching this to the guys in jail, they related with this. In fact, some of them, they're nodding their heads, that this demoniac felt some energy that he didn't have before. I mean, this guy has like incredible Hulk strength. The townspeople try to chain him up. And you guys ever, you felt that just the anger is so, it's just, and you feel strong for a moment. And this guy probably felt good at times. He had moments of like a euphoric high of like, yes, I just like crushed someone's skull, or man, that felt good. Or I broke this chains. I feel so strong. But man, sin always takes way more than it gives. It gives you something. It might give you a little high. Might give you a little buzz. Might make you feel good in the heat of that moment as you just cut your kid down. And some of you are like, well, I'm not demon possessed. Some of you are very oppressed. And you need to pray and that the Lord would break the chains, he would break the bonds, and that you would not anymore enjoy that just cutting people down, and it feels good in that strength. Well, this demoniac, he is not enjoying himself. Maybe there's moments that he enjoys, but he's not truly finding enjoyment. His personality becomes passive in that it finally, to these demons, he lets the demons take over, and these legion of demons, they just keep inviting more and more, just a giant mess. He loses the will to fight them off. His personality becomes passive to them, but they become very aggressive. He is passive to them, but they are very aggressive. He is disturbed and traumatized by these demons. This is the demoniac. The townspeople don't have medication to throw at him. They don't have an asylum to put him in, and so they chain him up. And it's ironic. Now listen, guys, listen. The townspeople believe this man needs chains, but they don't believe in the one that can break the chains. They don't believe in the one that can ultimately heal him. That statement, I'll say it again, they believe he needs to be chained up. If they had medication, they go, this guy needs medicated, he needs an asylum, but they don't believe in the one that can truly break the chains. The people's response to Jesus healing this demoniac is actually the most disturbing part of the story. You're like, man, this is something like out of Ghostbusters or Tales from the Crypt, or this is just trippy, and I'm disturbed. Be disturbed by the people. The townspeople are the most disturbing part of this whole story. Write that down. I think. So, verse 37, they ask Jesus to leave. How many churches are full of people that have asked Jesus to leave because they want to be king? They want the spotlight. They want it. They're me-centered. Woe to the man or woman that God lets you have your idol. Look out. Look out. Praise God that there's people that rebuke us and challenge us. That's why we need gospel community, right? We need people to rebuke us and go after our hearts when we unbelieve, when we become apathetic instead of in awe of God, when we become me-centered instead of Jesus-centered. It's kind of like, remember the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son? He takes the money and he runs, and then he comes back, and the father forgives the son, but the older brother is jealous. The townspeople are like the older brother. They're the backdrop of the story, the center stage. This is maniac that's made a missionary. But it's interesting that I think we should not take our eyes off of the townspeople. That is the most disturbing part of the story. And it's interesting, man. This is so interesting that Jesus is like, I'm going to use this maniac to be a missionary to these people. I mean, these prim and proper, put together religious people are getting, the missionary sent to them is this guy that used to be chained up, the maniac. Isn't that interesting? What's the Bible say? God uses the foolish things of the to shame the wise. Oh, man. So if you feel a little manic or feel like a maniac, you just feel like you're in good company. God's going to probably use you. You know, it's interesting. Like some people, when you see the a guy with the sleeves all inked up, tatted up, it maybe has a little colorful language, but he's real. Those people don't scare me. In fact, I like those people. It's the people that are prim and proper and come across all nice, but they stab you in the back. There's an underground arrogance to them. Those are the ones that scare me. I don't know about you. But I don't have any tattoos. That's not the point. Some of you are still hung up on that. So again, the townspeople are the most interesting part. And Jesus has mercy for the townspeople by sending this once maniac to be a missionary. Amazing. And being a missionary can start today. I made a little bit of a joke after I did announcements early on. Some of you that came in late, you missed them. But anyways, on your way out, I was like, man, if you don't go to that orange table, we're going to tackle you Richard Sherman style. You better go. But being a missionary could start today for you. I'm not kidding. I would love it for there to be a line out there. People are in line, not just for coffee and cupcakes, but in line to serve. How can I be a missionary? Wow, there's this women's ministry thing that's going on in gospel community. What's this about? Is it like a small group thing, or what do we do? Man, how do I get involved? Man, this jail ministry, I want to get involved. Go to the orange table. What about youth ministry? Orange table. The big Thanksgiving party that's happening right here that's free, okay? Because we're putting on a party, or we're all, be a missionary. Who is it? Start thinking. Who is it that you're supposed to invite? I dare you to invite your neighbor and say, hey, at our church after the service, if you don't feel real comfortable with preaching and that sort of thing, you just want a meal, love for you to come. Oh, now, we'd love for you to come. I'd sit with you in the service. Love for you to come. There's some music and some preaching and all that. There's a message. But if you want to come just for the food, we understand. Just invite them. Invite them. Be a missionary. Who is it that God's putting on your heart to invite? I dare you, write down 3 people that you can invite. You might go, oh, really? You want me to invite someone? Be a missionary. Being a missionary isn't just a Sunday thing. In fact, our vision is to be in the city for the city. There's a lot of people that are just in the city for themselves. For themselves. Are you in the city for the city? That you love them, and that as you bless them through the gospel, that God is blessing you through his gospel. It's not like, okay, I worked, I'm a missionary, now bless me. But it's out of him being a blessing that we're able to be a blessing to others. Be a missionary to your fantasy football league. Be a missionary to your coworkers. Be a missionary to your neighbors. Be a missionary to your gospel community. Be a missionary. Show up early. How awesome would that be if we actually got here early? Probably freak out Michael. Michael's like, so when you guys, let's practice that. What are you guys doing here? That actually happened at the Christmas Eve service. Like he was looking down, and he went to play, and everyone was there, and he was just like, I'm not used to people being here early. That's what he told me. He's like, I'm not used to people showing up this early. What if you showed up early? And we're like, you're looking out. Not like, don't weird out the new people. Like everyone just tackles them. You can be cool about it. But just, are you welcoming people? Or are you just like, no, I come in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. And that's all I do. Be a missionary. Look at Luke 8. Look at this call to be a missionary. This maniac that's made a missionary. Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you. Declare it. And he went away proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him. So I want to ask, what is holding you back from being a missionary to your city, to our city? This is our church. This is our city. I wrote something here. We won't be missionaries until we first find his saving and satisfying power. You won't be a missionary. You'll do a little bit of goodness. You might for a weekend go to the Union Gospel Mission, maybe help the poor. You might for once a year do a little Christmas box for people in a third world country. You can do that for, one time a year. We can all do that. You can be a missionary for a moment. Jesus not only saves us, but satisfies us. His all-consuming glory is so good. And if you look in your bulletins, you look at question 2. Hopefully you've been using your bulletins. There's a lot of space for notes if you're a note taker. But in our passage, we see, here's the question 2. We see the disciples, the healed demoniac, the bleeding woman, and Jairus seek Jesus out of what? Say it. Desperation. Are you truly desperate for Jesus? Look at Psalm 41 and verse 1 as we begin to wrap up. As a deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. And I'll tell you what, if you are in a dry season, get on the floor and don't give up. Don't stop praying until he blesses you. Just go, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop until the eyes of my heart have been enlightened. of the hope that he has called us. It's there. We just need to cry out for it. We need to say, Lord, help me. Help my unbelief. I believe, but help my unbelief. And then, man, when you ask, again, you have not because you ask not. I mean, just start asking and pleading. And man, look out. You'll become a deer that pants for him. Like a deer thirsty for water. You will be thirsty and desperate for Jesus Christ. I want to ask this question: does our fear of God drive us away or draw us towards him? The bleeding woman is on pursuit of Christ. She's a woman that had been bleeding. The number's 12 years. It's interesting that Jairus' daughter's 12 years old. I don't know if there's any connection, but it's just very interesting. She's been bleeding as long as this little girl's been alive. And incredible. And if she has bleeding in that day and age, and not to get too much into it, but you were seen as unclean. The Jews saw you as unclean. So she was constantly unclean. Without Jesus Christ, we are constantly what? Unclean. Very interesting. And the bleeding woman is not insulating herself. She's not isolating herself. She's not just like at a worship service sitting in the back with some space around her. She is crowded. There's people around her. She doesn't care. She is going after Jesus Christ. And it's interesting, Jesus touched this unclean woman, spends time with her, and she touches his garment, which would deem him unclean. So in a sense, that would make him, but no. How about the maniac, that people, this guy full of demons? Oh man, the Pharisees, the Sadducees would be like, oh, we got to stay away from this guy. We got to stay away from the unclean. We got to stay away from the lepers. And he runs towards the mess. He runs towards the mess. How about to touch a dead person? You touch a dead person, you're unclean. What does he do? He doesn't avoid these messes, these storms. He goes towards it, and he makes what was unclean clean. That's what Christ can do. He takes the gospel message. He doesn't avoid the mess, and he gives a message. A friend shared that with me, that he makes a message out of our mess. In this story, the demoniac, after being healed again, did all but beg to stay with Jesus. He wants to stay with him. How many of you, your spouse or your roommate had to beg you to be here today? Just interesting. That's it. Yeah. There's no... When the demoniac couldn't go with Jesus again, he's begging to go. What if your kids begged you? We got to go to church. We got to go. That's an awesome place. There's some parents who are like, that's my kids. In fact, I took a 6-week sabbatical, where I visited other churches and took some time. I was never here, and my kids lost their mind. They're like, we got to go. I'm like, yes. They were actually like angry. What are you doing? We're going to worship at home. And they're like, no, we are not. We like Michael better than you. This is very true. I'll grab the guitar. They're like, yeah. Again, Crossview's vision is to be in the city, for the city. What if we'd be a people that come together, that are not me-centered, but Christ-centered? That doesn't look for what the city can do for them, but what they're going to do through the gospel power, we can do for the city, to reach the city for Jesus Christ. Look at 1 Peter 1, 13 through 15. This is tackling fuel of the gospel. Listen carefully. Therefore, preparing your minds for action and being sober-minded. Many of we need a rebuke. Our minds are tainted with unbelief. Before we can have action, we need for Christ to have action in our hearts and to cement and steel and help our mind and our faith be certain. Be sober-minded. And then it says, set your hope fully on the grace. Grace means that divine, that God influence on our heart, not our own personality where we're just welling up this great grace and faith that comes from Him, that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Verse 14, as obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as He who has called you is holy, you also be holy in your conduct. So why do we need this message? We make a mess out of our lives, don't we? We make a mess out of life and often miss Christ's message of hope. And so what's the passage's answer? Here it is. Our Master takes our mess and gives us a message for the mission. I want to share real quick, just a couple minutes. So I'm a little long tonight, but here it is, guys. There's a table right here that I have for you. Before we break down this table, I want to share a little bit of the mess in our own life. And you might have seen on our Facebook, my wife showed the before and after of our backyard. The KID needed to do an easement and literally took half of our yard and just cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And it's looking like our title insurance is going to cover it all. It's like upwards of $50,000. I mean, just new, it's incredible. Just yard. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Just amazing how God is working. And so here's what I have here. Mess, mountain, message, missionary. Okay, what does that mean? The mess, in this case, was the KID easement reclaiming. The mountain was the finances. That's going to cost a lot of money. Tear down the fence, move the shed 100 feet, put cement over there, so on and so forth. So finances, fear, but the message is this. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I'm God. Trust in Him and be a missionary. Share it. Don't be afraid. To break this down quick, we've talked about the mess. The first mess that the disciples found them in was the storm. The mountain was the wind. The seemingly mountain around them was the wind, the waves, but the bigger mountain was their fear and unbelief in their heart. The message is be a faithful missionary to your own heart as well. Preach to your own heart. The next one, the mess with the demoniac, he had a legion of demons in him. The mountain, the bigger mountain though, was the judgmental, fearful townspeople. But God is like, I'm going to make you a missionary to the mountain. I'm going to make you a missionary to the city. So be a faithful missionary to your city. The third mess we see is the bleeding woman. She'd been bleeding for 12 years because of a disease. There could have been a mountain of, I don't have enough time. Jesus is in a hurry. What am I going to do? There's this crowd. Maybe shame. There could have been a mountain of fear and shame. But she goes anyways, and the message is be a faithful missionary even when life is crowded. The last one, big mess. If you're a dad and mom and you have a dead daughter, that's kind of a big mess. And the mountain was death. The other mountain, the seeming mountain, could have been the mockers. These mourners, so-called mourners. And just to give you a little history, you'd hire mourners to come in. So they're like hired actors mourning, some of them genuine, but they laugh at Jesus when He says she's only sleeping. So be a faithful missionary when people mock. I'm going to close with this story. Jesus raises this girl to life. It's interesting. A week ago, my dad needed to be raised from the dead, didn't he? My dad was dead on the table for 4 minutes. And I was thinking about something. That's too long. That's too long. A lot of like you watch like ER, and it's like, oh, they've been dead, and they like time it. Like you give up after a minute or two. You don't just keep. And so they go Chuck Norris style. They and start on his rib cage. They're resuscitating my dad. All the while I'm in the hospital talking to this checkout lady. She's very nice but very calm, and I'm like, no, you should not be calm. No, this is not a time to be calm. I'm like, hey, my dad, they think he might, have gone into cardiac arrest, and I don't know if he's alive or dead. How are we doing? He hasn't checked in yet. And actually the ambulance is still on its way. I'm like, how did I beat the ambulance? What's going on? Anyways, it's because they were resuscitating him at the surgery center. But very emotional for all of us. Like I'm like ready to throw up in the waiting room and just freaking out. Can you imagine Jairus, who's like, Jairus comes to Jesus, is just like, hey, so my daughter, she's really sick. And he's like, oh, hold on. Someone just touched me. I need to stop for a second. No. Like if we're at Trios walking in, we're getting ready. I mean, it's right there. And Jesus is with me. And like all of a sudden, like some lady comes up to Jesus. Is like, hey, I have this can you pray for me? Be like, I'm sorry. Later, we're going to come in. My dad, he's been dead for a little bit. Can we skip this and just head in for a little bit? And again, it looks like I'm trying to make light of it. There's a lot of tears. It was very emotional for our family, very hard. And it humbled us, showed us Jesus is the one that gives life. In fact, I was saying this to my kids. It got me emotional. I was saying, Jesus rose, brought Grandpa back from the dead. And I was like, just saying it with such power and just like, isn't that amazing? But I'm like, but he brought him back from the dead years ago spiritually. Yeah, I mean, rose him. And it was like, man, that's what it's all about. I want to close with this. It's better to have the presence of God and the presence of trial than the absence of God and the absence of trial. Take a picture of that. I saw that this week. I had to share it. Let's go to the Lord and pray. Father, thank you.